Quick question. What has your super fund returned, on average, over the last 10 years? Not your balance, not what went in, the annual return, the percentage, the number that tells you how hard your money has actually been working. Most Australians cannot answer that question. And here is the thing. The funds are not in a hurry to make it easy to find, because for a significant number of Australians, particularly those still sitting in the default fund their employer chose for them, that number is meaningfully lower than the top performer's number. And the gap between those two figures, compounded quietly over a working life, is not small. This video puts the actual 10-year numbers on the table. Your fund versus the top performers, the APRA data, the fee comparison, and the exact dollar figure the gap produces over 35 years of contributions. No fund marketing, no sponsored comparisons, just the numbers that exist and that most Australians have never been shown side by side. Before the numbers, a brief word on how to read them. When a super fund reports a return, the figure that matters is the net return, after investment fees and after tax, not the gross return, not the headline marketing number, the net figure. That is what actually lands in your account. A one-year return tells you almost nothing. Markets go up, markets go down. A fund can look brilliant in 1 year and mediocre over a decade, or vice versa. What matters is the 10-year average return. It smooths out the noise, it captures multiple market cycles, the good years and the bad, and it gives you a reliable picture of how a fund performs over the kind of time frame that actually resembles a working life. The source for this data is the Australian Prudential Regulation Authority, APRA. Not a bank, not a fund's own marketing team, the independent regulator. APRA collects mandatory performance disclosures from every registered super fund and publishes the results. The data is standardized, comparable, and publicly available. That is where these numbers come from. Here is what the data shows for the 10 years to March 2026. The median industry fund, 8.2% per year on average over 10 years. The median retail fund, 7.1% per year on average over the same period. The gap between those two medians, 1.1% every single year. Now, the top performers within the industry fund segment. Australian Super's balanced option, Australia's largest super fund, delivered 8.17% per year over the 10 years to March 2026. Australian Retirement Trust was named My Super Fund of the Year for 2026 by Super Ratings. Hostplus, Aware Super, and UniSuper have all consistently ranked in the top tier of APRA's annual performance data. These are not outliers, they are the sustained, consistent leaders, the funds that have delivered year after year across multiple market environments. And the funds at the bottom of the performance data? They are disproportionately retail funds, managed by banks and investment companies, running at higher fees, returning less on average to their members. The gap between the median retail fund and the top industry fund over 10 years is not one bad year, it is 1.1% compounding every single year. Here is what this channel will say that the funds will not. The marketing arms race in Australian superannuation is built deliberately on the fact that most members will never look up their fund's actual 10-year return. Every major super fund in Australia, top performer or bottom, runs television advertisings, they sponsor football teams, they publish glossy annual reports with photographs of smiling retirees, and the language is almost identical across every fund, every year. Working for members, your future, our focus, investing in you. Not one of those advertisements tells you what the fund actually returned over 10 years compared to the best alternative available to you. That number exists. APRA publishes it, but it is not in the advertising, because for a lot of funds, that comparison does not flatter them. Let's put the dollar figure on the gap. 1.1% annual return difference on a balance of $100,000 over 20 years. That gap produces approximately $50,000 more at retirement for the member in the top-performing fund versus the member in the median retail fund. Same contributions, same salary, same tax, different fund. $50,000 from a gap that sounds like a rounding error when you describe it as 1.1% per year. Scale that to a 35-year career and a larger starting balance, the situation of a 35 to 40-year-old with $150,000 in super today, and the difference is well over $100,000. That is the number the advertising will never show you, and this channel is going to show it to you every time. So why does no one check? There is a name for what happens with super in Australia. Call it invisible asset syndrome. Super is the only major financial asset most Australians own that never interrupts their week. Unlike a mortgage, it does not demand attention. Unlike a share portfolio, it does not send alerts. Unlike a bank account, it is not something you open regularly to see what is there. The balance appears once a year on a statement that most Australians glance at, file, and forget. The fund name was chosen by an employer, often at the first job, and because the system is automatic, the question of whether it is performing well simply never arises naturally. This is not carelessness, it is the design of the system. Super was built to be invisible, to save Australians without requiring them to think about it. And that design works. Balances grow, contributions accumulate, the system does what it was built to do. But the invisibility has a cost, and the cost is not invisible at retirement. The fund that never interrupts your week is not necessarily the fund that is working hardest for your money. The quiet ones are sometimes the best performers. Sometimes they are not. The only way to know is to look. The return gap is only half the picture. Fees compound just as powerfully as returns in the opposite direction. According to the Chant West Superfund Fee Survey from December 2025, the average total annual fee for a MySuper product, including administration and investment fees, varies significantly between fund types. Industry funds consistently come in lower. Retail funds consistently come in higher. A fee difference of 0.6% per year does not sound significant. Over 25 years, on a balance that grows, that 0.6% difference costs approximately $95,000 in final super balance, not from bad investment performance, from the drag of a higher fee compounding quietly in the wrong direction for 25 years. Now combine the two effects, a lower return and a higher fee, in the same fund. That is the situation facing a significant portion of Australians still in retail super defaults. Lower average returns than the top industry funds, higher average fees than the top industry funds. Both of those gaps compound in the same direction, away from the member's retirement balance. This is not an argument that every retail fund is worse than every industry fund. Some retail funds are competitive, some industry funds underperform. The APRA data is about medians and consistent patterns over 10 years, not individual exceptions. But the consistent pattern over 10 years of APRA data is clear, and the member sitting in the median retail default is, on average, paying more and receiving less. 3 steps, starting this week. Step 1. Find your fund's name. It is on your payslip, Now appearing more visibly since Payday Super came into effect on the 1st of July 2026, it is also on your most recent annual super statement. Write it down. Step 2. Go to the ATO's Your Super Comparison tool. You can find it at ato.gov.au or through a search for Your Super Comparison tool. It is free, independent, and built on APRA's mandatory data. Enter your current super fund, set your balance. The tool will show you your fund's 10-year return alongside every other comparable My Super product in Australia. Step 3. Look at the gap. Find your fund's return on the table, then find where the top performers sit. Calculate the difference, in percentage points, per year. Then ask what that difference produces on your current balance over your remaining years to retirement. The tool does most of that calculation for you. One honest note this video will not skip. Past performance does not guarantee future returns. A fund that has outperformed for 10 years is not guaranteed to do so for the next 10. But 10 years of consistent data is not noise. It is the most reliable indicator APRA has. And the pattern of industry fund outperformance over retail fund performance is not 1 year of luck. It is a decade of structural advantage, driven by lower fees and a profit from member model that does not pay dividends to shareholders. If your fund is in the top tier, that's worth knowing. If it is not, that is worth knowing more. One step this week. Find your fund's name, go to the Your Super Comparison tool, look at your 10-year return, then look at the top 5 funds in the table. That is the comparison your fund's advertising will never show you. Wealthy Ordinary just did. Subscribe for the Super Truth series because this is video 2 of many going deep into what your super statement does not show you.